Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Indie Zone. My name is Kathy. In January of 2025, during oral argument in the matter styled as Idaho versus Kohberger on various motions to suppress and or for a Franks hearing that the defense had proffered in the case, the presiding jurist at the time, appointed by the Idaho Supreme Court personally, Judge Stephen J. Hippler, at one point remarked, DNA on the sheath is probable cause every day and twice on Sunday, words to that effect. Judge Hippler went on to deny every single motion to suppress evidence and also for a Franks hearing. Several months later, Mr. Kohberger would go on to plead guilty to all of the charges he was then scheduled to stand trial on before a jury of his peers. That occurred at the July 2nd, 2025 change of plea hearing before Judge Hippler. Shortly thereafter, on July 23rd, 2025, Mr. Kohberger was sentenced by Judge Hippler. And the case was closed but for the issue of what about the multiple documents that were filed under seal in the case, including any evidence that the state may have included in their responses opposing the motions to suppress that caused Judge Hippler to make the remark that he did in open court at oral argument and anywhere else. That sheath is addressed in the very first document in the case, the December 29th, 2022 affidavit of probable cause signed by Detective Brett Payne of the Moscow Police Department, where he describes arriving at 1122 King Road at approximately 4:00 p.m. being escorted through the property by first responder Officer Corbin Smith, who, along with several other first responders, reported on scene hours before Detective Payne did, at noon or shortly thereafter. Unlike Detective Payne's reports, none of the first responders from Moscow Police Department in documents that have been released thus far say word one about seeing a sheath on the bed next to Madison when viewed from the door, as Detective Payne did. And not just the Idaho affidavit of probable cause, which led directly to the court order signed that day by Magistrate Judge Megan E. Marshall, and the warrant for Mr. Kohberger's arrest as asked for by Detective Brett Payne. And then because Mr. Kohberger was not physically in the state of Idaho on December 29th, 2022. He was across the country visiting with his family in Monroe County, Pennsylvania. That caused authorities to contact authorities in Pennsylvania. In the attachment to the Pennsylvania PCA is the statement from Detective Brett Payne that the sheath was visible when viewed from the door, looking in on the bed next to Madison. However, the first responders who arrived hours earlier at noon or shortly thereafter don't mention the sheath. Please review their reports, recalling what they saw, what they heard, what they did at 1122 King Road, November 13th, 2022. They are Very first officer on scene, Officer Mitch Nunez, Officer Warner, Officer Smith, Officer Snyder, and Sergeant Gunderson, all of the Moscow Police Department. Please also be sure to review that portion of Officer Snyder's report written on November 13th, 2022, that addresses photographs that he took shortly after his arrival on scene, hours before Detective Payne. There were approximately 15 photographs, and some of them describe events that required him to get very, very close to that bed, at least based on the descriptions to the photographs, and not one contained what you would expect to see: multiple photographs of a sheath at all angles, not mentioned in any of the photographs taken in Madison Mogen's room. The following month, after the case was closed, Judge Hippler began the process on August 4th, 2025, as he did, of deciding which documents would continue to remain sealed in the case, which documents would be unsealed completely with no redactions, and which documents would be unsealed but with redactions. That is contained in his order of August 4th, 2025. Both sides were asked to provide their responses containing specified objections, if any, and non-objections, if any, and both sides did. On August 15th, 2025, a temporary restraining order was issued in Latah County, where the case began, and was ordered transferred by operation of the Supreme Court of the state of Idaho. No further proceedings were to happen in Latah County. Everything was to happen in Ada County associated with the case. Once that temporary restraining order was entered, the effect that it had was to cause the Moscow Police Department, through the city of Moscow, to be unable to release any further records from their investigatory files, such as of the first responders. According to this press release, it appears that no further public records requests were fulfilled as of mid-August 2025, and because the case is ongoing, the temporary restraining order remains in place. There is no final order on whether that restraining order should be discharged, if it should be converted into a permanent restraining order in part or in whole. This is going on just as Judge Hippler is looking at other records from the Idaho versus Kohberger case. This is a process that's ongoing, because what he is doing is he is looking at 2 months worth of the more than 2.5 years of documents that have been sealed from the public. He hasn't gotten yet to the matters that were argued in January of 2025 and to the filings that were submitted at the end of 2024 regarding the motions to suppress, the motions for a Franks hearing, the responses and replies thereto, majority of which is under seal. In light of the foregoing, I ask the rhetorical question: why are there two proceedings deciding what will be unsealed versus what will be sealed in anything that was relied on, especially as heavily as that sheath was? Given the Supreme Court's order, should this matter be before Judge Stephen J. Hippler in Ada County and not before Judge Megan E. Marshall in Latah County? These are opinions that I provide pursuant to the First Amendment, United States Constitution. They are complete opinions, speculation, commentary, in looking at four corners of documents. I'd like to hear your thoughts and your opinions on this matter. Please leave them here. My name is Kathy. Thank you for joining us here today.